Hey everybody, it's Jim Hagemeyer with the Leslie Wells Realty, and across the table from me is my good friend,
Realtor Tom, and today we've got probably the most interesting couple you're going to talk to.
I'm really on fire about this, Tom. This is cool. Today we have Peggy Donahoe and Ron Prouty, I had to practice that, with their book Miguel's Bay. And the cool thing about this book it took place right here in North River many, many years ago. It's a love story. It's a history book. There's some war, there's some passion, there's some emotion in this book. And I'll tell you the truth, a lot of action, a lot of things going on. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning.
We're glad to be here.
This is awesome. Welcome. Hey, what inspired you to write the book? Okay, and why did you write it? What brought this on?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. I'm Peggy Donahoe. I grew up here in Bradenton, and I'm a native Floridian, but beyond that, I'm 5 generations from Manatee County. My mom is 4th, and then it goes on up to Miguel Guerrero, who is the central character of our book.
Okay. Great. So why did you write it? What brought this on? What inspired you to write the book?
Well, because I was in his family. You know, all the generations knew about Miguel, where we came from. He settled on Terracea Island, which we love and adore. It's beautiful. And it has such a great history, but Miguel's story is so unbelievable. He's kind of like the Indiana Jones movie character that
Right.
He came as a young man from Menorca, Spain. He came to Terracea, set up a fishing rancho, married a German girl. They didn't even speak each other's language. And set up housekeeping. He fought the Seminole War, the Civil War. You know, he just did it all. And this is when he and the Atzeroth family were pretty much the only 2 settlers on Terracea Island, on that part of the island. So you can imagine showing up in your boat with a shovel and an axe and trying to clear out even an acre of land for your mangroves, with the mangroves for your little log cabin and your fishing rancho. If you know anything about Terracea, Boots Point is where his rancho was. Little fishing rancho, and then across the Humpback Bridge on the Miguel Bay side on the coast was his log cabin. So that, and we have a marker now on Boots Point and Bayshore Loop Road, so you can read about his story.
So did I see this? His spot was 46 acres.
Yep.
Yeah.
All along the coast, all the way down towards Madeira Bickle Mount. He owned that whole stretch along the beach there.
Okay. So there's a lot going on here, but how much of this is actually history, and how much did you take maybe some liberties, Ron?
Well, with anything like this, you have to take some liberties because Miguel unfortunately didn't keep a diary or a journal. But what we did is we tried to research all the personal narratives of the families at the Eaton Room at the Central Library in Bradenton. There's a lot of pioneer memoirs and things that you can use, and Peggy spent a lot of time doing that. Several years before I became reacquainted with Peggy, I had done a lot of research on the Civil War units that were in the area, and that's how I discovered Miguel Guerrero. Had no idea that he was connected to Peggy's family, who I've known since I was a kid.
About that?
But so we used diaries, journals, period newspapers to find out the key events, the milestone events throughout the timeline of the book, so that we could stay as accurate as possible. But because he didn't keep his own diary, we had to take liberties, what exactly he would have experienced. But basing it on the diaries of other soldiers in his unit, we feel like we got a pretty accurate portrayal of what he would have seen and heard, when he was fighting in the Seminole War and also the Civil War.
So it's a history book. One thing about history, Tom, we know how it ends.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well actually it doesn't end because here we are, right?
Well, for us, we have to start at the end and work our way back to the beginning.
So, Peggy, I have friends that are into genealogy. They do the family trace thing, and they spend a lot of time in graveyards. Did y'all do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When we were growing up, every Saturday we came up to the Skyway Memorial. When you're 5 generations from somewhere, and then your dad is also 5 generations from an area, you feel like you're related to everybody in town, and you kind of are.
You kind of are.
Yeah. My mother used to say, you better watch what you do and say, because everybody's related, and I'll find out about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, cemeteries, and I have my earliest graves that we can find are in the Gillette Historical Cemetery, and they go back to the mid 1800s. Miguel, unfortunately, if you read the book, we're not sure exactly where his grave is. We think it's in the Fogartyville Cemetery in the earliest part, but in the 1920s, their records burned in a fire.
Oh.
So we don't know it, but there's no marker, is what I'm saying. But the Fogarty family is also a big part of the book, and so of course Fogartyville Cemetery has a lot of relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Fogartyville is actually like the Bradenton's side, is that right?
Right.
Okay.
The Bradenton side
So-
of the Manatee River from 26th Street West to McLewis Bayou along Riverview Boulevard.
Newsflash, it wasn't always called Bradenton, okay?
Right.
Dr. Braden that was his homestead, right? Do I have that right? So anyway, so the great history in this, and I appreciate that, putting the names and the places together and exactly where we are geographically speaking.
One thing that we're proud of, so many people read the book, and even people that grew up here, or 2 or 3 generations, didn't know where a lot of the locations were.
Right.
So we put together a driving tour. I typed out 4 pages of addresses with little descriptions so that after you read the book, for 4 hours you can drive around and you may not see a building or something that was there 200 years ago, but you'll at least know where the location was. And that's really opened up a lot of people's eyes
We should do
once they
that
read
now.
that. Yeah, you really
Go
should.
for a drive.
A lot of people aren't familiar with the north side of the river, Terracea and all the history that happened out there. And there's historical markers you can go out there and read that point out the locations.
Sneed Island, Emerson Point, Rabonia, Memphis,
Yeah.
Gillette, okay? And these are, I won't say they're
Yeah.
forgotten places, but we don't talk about them much. We live
Overlooked,
here.
yeah.
Well, a lot of people drive through Terracea to get to the Skyway Bridge and don't even realize they've gone to an island. There are 4 sides of water that
about
make
that?
up an island, and most people couldn't even name the bodies of water that make Terracea an island.
A lot of times when we talk to people, we'll say, "Are you familiar with Terracea Island?" And you get the blank stare. And we'll say, "Yeah, where the Skyway touches on the south end." Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is kind of sad because it's such a beautiful little island.
I had asked Tom a little bit ago, where's Boots Point?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
right.
Oh wait. Oh yeah. I know where that is. So y'all you co-wrote the book. You wrote it together.
Yeah.
And Ron, how did that work? I mean, did you write part of it? She wrote part of it, or you sat down
Right.
together and?
Yeah, originally I was starting out to write it. Peggy encouraged me to write Miguel's story, so I was going to write it. She was going to research it. I wrote a chapter when I was stuck on the Skyway Bridge one time going to work. Ironically, right on Terracea on
Okay.
that side of it. And I sent that to her, and a few weeks followed, and she didn't get another chapter. She got frustrated, I guess, waiting for the next one. So she wrote a chapter, and it blew me away when I read it. So it made me think of the novel Cold Mountain, which goes back and forth between a Civil War soldier and his future wife. So we decided maybe we'd try to do it that way. So I wrote Miguel's chapters, and she wrote Frederica's chapters, which is we think is pretty cool because a lot of times the woman's point of view in these stories is overlooked. And the pioneer women had just as hard a time as the men did when they went off to war. And Miguel and Frederica were separated quite a bit throughout the story.
Because he fished, he was gone a lot.
Fished,
Yeah.
he fought in the Seminole Indian War with the militia, he fought in the Civil War, so they spent a lot of time apart. So I think it worked out really well for us to co-write it that way. And we didn't know how that was going to turn out either at first. But
Right.
when we put it together, we saw how miraculously it all just flowed together. And we have the same writing style. Which
Which we
worked
didn't
out.
know because
Yeah.
we never written anything.
Yeah, so it's pretty seamless. And if I didn't tell you, we don't point out that we co-wrote it, people would think it was written by one.
No, I couldn't tell who wrote what.
Yeah.
right.
If you'll notice at the beginning of every chapter, there's a little line drawing. It may be a Calusa dolphin, which would be Miguel's chapter, or a line drawing of a hibiscus bloom, and that's Frederica's chapter. But if you'll notice, the book is dedicated to my mother, Marian Anderson. She had been a legal secretary all her life in Bradenton, Florida, and she was the one in her family, her generation, that was the historian. Every family seems to have one person that goes for the deep dive to find out about the past. And so when I moved back to Bradenton 7 years ago, we moved her to Freedom Village, and she had the big file cabinets chock full of deeds and marriage licenses. She had researched her family history her whole life, really, and written down so much. But she'd gotten older, and she'd always wanted a book written because his story is mentioned in Fogartyville book and Lords of Manatee, but a lot of people get it very wrong. You know, one person thought he was a pirate, you know, and one person...
Because he was Spanish.
Yeah, because he was Spanish. So her goal, one of her goals in life was to get this story out and have it as true to fact as possible. So when I moved back, she just started pushing all this information on me, and I really became obsessed like some people do. It's the first time in my life I had time to think about my family history or genealogy, and I lived at the Central Library for a long time, but that's how that got
So
started.
while we're on, tell us about what's the central message of the book? What's the bottom line, Ron?
Well, really, it's all about family, you know, about the importance of family through tough times, perseverance, also an appreciation of our ancestry, you know, where we came from. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the trials and tribulations our ancestors endured. So I think really that's the central message. Of course, there's a lot of history of the area, you know, which is also important. But if you had to pick a central message, I would think it would be perseverance in the face of hard times. And at some point, we all go through those.
Just a quick side too, it's not just about that family. You'll read about all the pioneers that were here in this part of the state during that time, and you'll go down to the Big Cypress during the Seminole War. You know, it's a good Central Florida history lesson, whether you care about the Guerrero family or not.
Right.
Yeah, all the people that are mentioned in the book, the Gates, the Glaziers, you know, all of them are actual people that lived here on the river at that time.
Wow.
And all the events in the book are actual things that happened historically. You know, you asked about how accurate it was. We were very careful to not make up things. We had to make up conversations and, you know, make some inferences on things. But the things you read about and the people you read about are actual things that happen.
Yeah, and they're marked in the area. I mean, you drive around, you see the names
Right.
of some of the places, and oh yeah, that's.
We'd love to get the book into the school system. When we were growing up, 4th grade, we all had Florida history, and now there's just not much attention in the school system. So maybe someday we give them away to teachers. If you're a teacher, I'll give you one, because we want them to know the history of Florida too.
Who came up with the cover of this book? It's a beautiful cover.
Well, that's the type of thing I do at the Tampa Bay Times. I'm a graphic designer, multimedia designer. So that's a Photoshop piece. Peggy helped me with that too. She found the boat, and we put a background with it to represent Miguel Bay.
Excellent. Excellent.
So
We're self-published through Amazon, Kindle, direct publishing. So it was a big learning experience just to learn how to publish a book once we wrote the book. But that opens up a door to anybody who has an idea and a passion for a book. Write your book and you can publish it yourself.
So what happens next? Is there going to be a sequel? I mean, there's more generations behind this. What do you think? What do you see in the future?
We're working on that now. We're about halfway through our next book, which is going to be about the Seminole Indians that lived in the area. Lived right on Brayton River for a while, and the Second and Third Seminole Indian War impacted Manatee County, which was huge back then. It went from the Hillsborough line all the way down to Port Charlotte. So that's the next book that's in the works. We've been researching it for like 5 years now, and we've gone to the National Archives several times, and Oklahoma to trace the Indians that migrated out that direction, and down into the Big Cypress and the Everglades. So this book's really going to emphasize the story of the area from the Seminole Indians' perspective, whereas this one's more from the settlers' perspective, to give it some balance.
Right. No, there was a learning experience too for me, because again, Miguel was involved in the Seminole War, but also the Civil War, which was brutal.
Yeah.
Well, you have to realize the men of that time had just been part of the Armed Occupation Act, where anybody could claim land, but they had to sign that they would, at least 5 acres would be developed with homestead and a business, and if any war came up, they had to defend the area. So a lot of these men, it wasn't their choice, but but Miguel always chose. He was the only Spanish fisherman that we know that ever fought from this area in the Civil War. It's, you know, in the not Civil War, Seminole War. Yeah. So it was defending their area. Didn't even necessarily mean they were pro-slavery. You know, if war was here, you defend your family and your property.
Ironically, Miguel left Minorca, Spain, because he was trying to escape the the Carlista War and all the devastation in Spain at that time that wrecked the economy. So he came here trying to get away from war, and he walked right into two of them.
That's right.
The other ironic thing is Guerrero means warrior.
Oh,
So it's
really?
almost like he was born to do that,
Born
you know.
to fight.
But he came out the other side.
But
Yeah, he did.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not what he wanted to do. But sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
Tom, I can't wait for the movie. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Where can people get the book?
Well, right now at the Bradenton Public Market every Saturday, we have a booth set up and we sell a lot of books to local people, and even tourists are so interested in the history. So we've been surprised how many out-of-state people buy the book and enjoy it. Then they can't wait for that. We've got a list of people that say, when your next one comes out, please write us, let us know when it's done. So, but they can, we have a Miguel's Bay Facebook page. You can message us. If you're local, I'll bring you a book. You
See.
know, you can order them on Amazon, but you won't, it's more expensive. You'll pay shipping and tax. So we're local and we just love for people to have it. So contact us and we'll get you a book. Or come to the Bradenton Public Market. Our last week is the first week of June. We're not going to do the summer, but we start back in October. And some of the local museum stores carry it also. So
Well, this has been awesome. Peggy, Ron, thanks
you.
for coming in this
Thanks
morning.
for having us.
Fabulous. Yeah, good job.
Good.
All right, everybody, it's Tom and Jim with Tom and Jim's Awesome Real Estate Adventure from Leslie Wells Realty. Thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.